Namaste, everyone. A very warm welcome to today's Yes Talk. The title today is Upanishadic Stories for Self-Development. Our guest speaker is Dr. Beloo Mehra. Let me share a brief introduction for her. Dr. Beloo Mehra currently serves as Director of BhāratShakti, an institute of Sri Aurobindo Society, dedicated to research and program development in areas related to Indian culture. A former professor at an American university, she has more than 2 decades of experience in teaching, curriculum development, researching, and guiding research scholars. Dr. Mehra has been working in the field of Sri Aurobindo Studies for more than 15 years as a student, educator, program designer, curator, researcher, writer, and editor. She writes for several publications and speaks regularly at various platforms on topics related to integral education, Indian culture, social cultural evolution, and integral yoga. She has developed and taught several semester length courses and has curated several workshops and seminars in these areas for university students in India and the US. Velu ma'am, we are so glad and so honored to have you with us on the Yes platform once again. Thank you so much for joining us today. Look forward to a lovely and interesting session with you, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, dear Arunima, for this very kind introduction and for reaching out and for making all the arrangements for this session. And thank you also to Dr. Ramesh Bijlani. I don't know if he'll be joining us, whether we will get to see him a little bit. But, when he wrote back, I don't know, maybe 2-3 months back, that it's been long since we did this. So I said, yes, it was time. So I'm very glad it worked out. So thank you so much for really making this happen. So I chose this topic because I had been kind of like, just immersed myself in the world of Upanishads and Sri Aurobindo's writings on Upanishads and Sanatan Dharma for a while. And there is something so beautiful about stories, about storytelling traditions of India. So I thought, why not connect the two, since Upanishads also have many interesting stories. So I picked out few. We'll see within the time given, because I do want to leave out some time for interaction, because one can go very deep into interpreting these stories. So I'll briefly tell or retell a few stories and then give a little bit of my understanding based on my understanding of Sri Aurobindo's insights into the stories, into the world of Upanishadic literature or the Vedantic literature itself. So I'm going to just share my screen because, in an online forum, it's always interesting to have some visuals. So I'll just start with this. Okay, I don't want to, yeah. Is this visible? Is this visible? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's, before we get started with the stories, I'll just unpack the 3 terms in the title, just very briefly. Upanishads, stories, and the idea of self-development itself. So, your platform is called Yoga, Education, and Spirituality. I think the idea of self-development also comes from that for me, because there is a very, I would say, a very consciously thought out or planned, consciously intended purpose, that the kind of talks that you have on your platform are very much, in terms of practical spirituality or the spiritual practicality. So that was very significant in my understanding also of the purpose behind these Yes talks, and from few talks that I've heard on your platform. So Sri Aurobindo, at one place where he describes the very intention of integral yoga, he says the key aspect of my yoga is an inner self-development, so that to gradually become one with God, and in that oneness with God, do action in the world, be in the world. So at one place, he speaks out that the very purpose, the very primal law and purpose of our individual life is to seek its own self-development. And he, because he was a poet, he describes very poetically at many places that man or human individual is greater than plant or animal, but he is abnormal in its normality because he is seeking what plant and animal have already attained, which is the perfection in their very being. And that perfection, that imperfection that human individual has, he says it's not something to be deplored, but rather it is a sign that, or it's a assurance, a promise that there is, through constant seeking of self-development, human will arrive at what he is intended to be, which is the divine. So not just be one with the divine, but be the divine. So that's what I had in mind when I thought, why not take this idea of self-development through this presentation. The other word that I have in my title is stories. Now, see, we live in this very rational or maybe post-rational age a little bit, but so with all the logic and science and the focus on facts, yet there is this innate need that we have for beautiful stories. And at one point, somebody had asked the mother about a very deep philosophical question. And if I remember correctly, the question was had something to do with, because evolution happens in time, does involution also happen in time? And in response to that, mother said, there are three ways I can address this question. One is in a very metaphysical, philosophical way, but that she said, it's for the scholars and it can be a little arid and dry. Another is a psychological way, which is about studying the movement of consciousness. But she said, let's not speak about that because one has to really live it. But then she said that the way that sits most comfortably with our consciousness is the way of stories, the way of imagination. And there she says that if we can constantly carry that childlike consciousness, stories are the effective means to make knowledge living to that childlike consciousness. So if we aspire to be the sincere children of mother, I thought, why not give ourselves this, few minutes to kind of revel in some of the stories that our ancestors have given us, our rishis have given us, to really bring out the idea of self-development. So she said, stories can be a means to make living to our childlike consciousness something which would otherwise be too remote from us. So she said, I'm not going to follow the metaphysician way or the psychologist's way, but I would follow the one. She used the word cinematographic because stories give you truths in a cinematographic, very visual sort of way. So just very quickly, what Upanishads are, I don't need to really spend time on that. Most people already are familiar with that. So Sri Aurobindo, just to kind of quickly remind how he valued Upanishads as body of literature or as body of, epic hymns of, he said, these are epic hymns of self-knowledge, world knowledge, and God knowledge. And they are the highest expression of the Indian mind. So he really valued Upanishads as, the Vedantic work at that level, the highest self-expression of the Indian mind, Indian genius. So the term, as most of us already know, Upanishad, sitting near, but often people think it is just sitting near the feet of the guru, sitting at the feet of the guru to gain higher knowledge. But it also means sit near the highest truth within, the highest knowledge within. So one has to through the process of identification, be one with the highest knowledge within. So it's also sitting near to the truth within. And the highest, or the, if one were to really summarize what is the fundamental Upanishadic vision, so Sri Aurobindo has written so much, but I think this could be the one way in which he describes what is that fundamental vision that Upanishads give us, that give us the supreme ideal of a spiritual action that is founded on oneness with God and all living beings. So why I chose this particular phrase from Sri Aurobindo is to identify, or to kind of emphasize the point that Upanishads, like the Vedas, are very much speaking of a very life-affirming spirituality, a very practical spirituality. It's not the spirituality of an ascetic, but to be lived, to be practiced, to be walked upon in the world, in the life, and doing spiritual action, but which is founded on oneness with God. So some of the stories that I have selected for our session today will hopefully reveal some of these qualities that we must cultivate in our inner self-development, so that we can gradually walk on this path of life-affirming spirituality, which will help us through this process of identification, get closer to the truths within, the highest knowledge within, the highest truth within. So the first story that I'm going to take is from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. This is one of the very, long, expansive prose Upanishads. And this story comes in the 5th part of the Upanishad. So the story goes like this. So there is Prajapati. Prajapati is the lord of all creatures, the primal father of all creatures. And he has 3 groups of students staying with him, studying with him. So one group are the Devas, another group are the human individuals, the Manushya, the man. Manushya, or the word man, comes from the root manas, which means mind. So the mental creature, not necessarily the gendered man. And the Asuras. So Asuras are also children of the same existence, the same creation. So the Asuras are also another group of students that Prajapati has. So they are, having a good time staying in the hostel, as you will. So one day, Devas suddenly think, it's been way too long since we got some very specific instruction from our teacher. So they go to Prajapati's chamber and say, give us some instruction. Give us some direct knowledge, something that concrete that we can take. So maybe Prajapati is tired, or we don't know what, but he just said one syllable. He said, the. And then he puts them a challenging question. Have you understood what this syllable means, the? And the Deva, being Devas, they say, yeah, we've understood. So Prajapati says, tell me what that means. They say, Damyata. So he says, yes, you have understood. By the, I mean Damyata. I'll come to what these terms mean a little later. So the men, the human individuals, they also say, oh my gosh, Deva have gone and gotten some very secret knowledge. We should also go. So they knock at the door of Prajapati. Sir, give us some specific instruction. Prajapati is in the same mood. He says, okay, here you go, the. Have you understood what that means? The men say, yeah, we have understood, sir. What is it? Well, they say, from the comes datta. He says, correct, you have understood. Now, Asuras, why would they be behind? So they say, okay, sir, please give us some instruction. So Prajapati gives them, he treats everyone equally. No difference. He gives them the same instruction, the. Have you understood by the what is meant by the? And they say yes. What is it? From the comes dayadhvam. He says yes. Sorry, I moved a little too fast to the next one. So yeah, so he says you've understood what the means, what I mean by the. So now the question is, what is the, and why three different meanings are interpreted by three groups of students. So damyata is the value of self-control, controlling oneself. Daman, that's the word we are most familiar with, to do some kind of daman, to put some control over something. So Deva, or the one who are living in a life of splendor, the shining beings, Devas in our, Vedic, Vedantic worldview are the children of light, children of infinite splendor. They are the powers that affirm, Sri Aurobindo writes someplace, they are the powers of the Supreme which affirm what is good, what is light, what is beautiful, what is true, the Devatas. But they can also get egoistic in their richness, in their splendor. So the power of self-control is needed for the Devic part in us. That's how the Rishi explains this story in the Upanishad. For the Devic part in us, we need to cultivate the value of self-control. Otherwise, we can get too egotistical in our own splendor, in our own sense of goodness. For the human part in us, Datta symbolizes, or Datta actually literally means the value of giving, charitable, to be generous. But it is not the generosity in the ordinary sense of giving away one's material possessions. It is about the highest generosity, the highest giving that the mother also speaks of, giving of oneself. So we tend to get very possessive of our own good qualities, our skills, our talents, our all kinds of, from material to psychological to even spiritual possessions, knowledge, to be generously giving. For the human part in us, we must constantly practice and cultivate the value of giving, charity, especially self-giving. And the highest giving is the self-giving to the divine in all the parts and movements of our being. And then we also have the third part in us, which is the asuric part in us, the tamasic part in us. Those children that, again, Sri Aurobindo defines them as the asuras, are the darkened children of the Supreme, who chose to be in darkness. They can tend to be cruel, brutal. For them, for that part in us, we need to cultivate and practice compassion, daya, dayadhvam. So the story ends in the Upanishads that whenever now there is lightning, the lightning flashes make the sound the, reminding us of these three values of the that we must cultivate, must develop in us. Damyata, Datta, and Dayadhvam, which is self-control, self-giving, and compassion. So this, I thought, is a very beautiful, simple story, but with a very profound message that we must, another interesting part in the story is that we are a composite of what may seem like mutually opposing or contradictory values. Because there is the Devic part in us, there is the divine element in us, and the divine element is, attracted towards light and good and true and beautiful. Hence, the spiritual ego can be easily built up. So the idea of self-control. We have the human part in us, which is, acquiring possessions, gaining all kinds of possessions to develop ourselves, to do good for the world, in the sense that through our skills, through our talents, but this has to be done in a spirit of generosity rather than, an egotistical that I'm doing good to others. Then finally, the compassion for the devilish part in us, for the asuric part in us, demonic part in us, we can reduce that by cultivating compassion. So that's one story from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Arunima ji, I may request that you can just maybe tell me about the time if I tend to go beyond your scheduled time. So that's first story that I've chosen. The second story is one of my favorite stories, and I was very thrilled to see that Sri Aurobindo also has given very beautiful interpretation of this story. And this is from another very expansive prose Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad. And this is the story of Satyakam Jabala. The story is very long. I have thought of sharing one part now, and if there is time and interest, we can go to the second part, because the second part is a lot deeper. It needs a lot more philosophical explanation. So the first part is about how does this one young boy, Satyakam, he becomes a student. So the story goes like this. So Satyakam is what today in our language we call from economically, socio-economically challenged, underprivileged background kind of a student. Now he wants to be a student, and he wants to join a particular Gurukul of Haridrumata of, the Gautama lineage. And he goes to his mother. The name itself is very interesting, Satyakam, how the Rishi used the name of the student. So Satyakam goes to his mother one day and he says, so mother, tell me, of what lineage am I? Of what clan do I belong to? And his mother says, look, Satyakam, in my youth, I was pretty, I was not a well-to-do woman, and I had to work as paricharika, as a household maid in several households, and I served many men. So she's very frank, very straightforward, and she says, I served many men, and it was during that time that I had you. So I'm sorry, but I cannot tell you who your father is or what your lineage is. So Satyakam says, fine. And then she says, look, my name is Jabala, so you are Satyakam Jabala. And he's satisfied. So he goes to this guru, Haridrumata Gautama, and he says, sir, I want to be enrolled in your Gurukul. And the guru asks, what is your Gotra? What is your lineage? And Satyakam says, I do not know. I asked my mother this question, what is my lineage? And my mother told me that in my young days, I served many men, and she doesn't know who my father is and what lineage I belong to. And the guru says, fine, only a Brahmin can speak the truth in such a straightforward, candid way. So why don't you go get the ceremonial sticks, the samhita, the samhita, the fire, the sticks that they use to do a fire sacrifice, a yagna ceremony. Come, bring that, and I will give you initiation, and you will be enrolled in my guru. So this is where the first part of the story ends. Many commentators, many acharyas have spoken about this, but Sri Aurobindo's interpretation is really very amazing and in a way very enlightening. So it's a little long passage where he gives an explanation of this story, this particular tale, but these are the key points that, or at least one of the key points that he brings up. So one, he says that, this story implies that once upon a time, maybe in our culture, we did not have this restriction of who can become a student. The criteria of becoming a student was not really about whether somebody is born in a certain lineage, even though it was asked because of the way maybe some records were kept or certain other things. But the gurus, the true enlightened beings knew who or what makes someone a true Brahmin. So even, and then the other point he also speaks about, which I don't have it mentioned here, that the story also tells us, which is actually relevant to the second part of the story, which is when Satyakam Jabala, after getting enrolled as a student, ends up becoming a great acharya himself, a great guru himself. So he says the story also tells us that in India, we never had this thing that, only a certain kind of people with some kind of birth lineage will be allowed to do certain kinds of works. The merit, the knowledge, the gunas that made the individual who he or she, or what kind of work he or she can do. So in a way, he also interprets this story as a challenge to the more conventional understanding of the distorted caste system that came up much later in our society. So he uses this story to refute that was never the intention or the actual living truth of our past. But let's come to the main point that he says. The story tells us who really is a true Brahmin. The Brahmin word itself is the one who is seeking Brahman, who is seeking the highest knowledge, the highest truth. And two examples, 2 points that Sri Aurobindo picks up from the way the story is narrated in the Upanishad, that this little boy, Satyakam, what makes him truly a Brahmin is, and not a Kshatriya, is that he does not get any kind of, what's the way, how should I say it? He does not get disturbed when he learns about his birth history. He knows very well. Sri Aurobindo says he must have known about his parentage, about his lineage in some sense. And yet he's not disturbed at all. So he is equal in man apaman, samo man apamanayo. So even a kshatriya, the one who is more about valor, prestige, honor, social honor, for him or her also, it will be, a matter of pride or shame. But a true Brahman, a true seeker of highest knowledge, remains equal, saman, whether he faces any ridicule. The guru could have ridiculed him, the guru's shishyas could have ridiculed him, but he remains equal. It does not matter to him at all. He just explains the truth or describes the truth in the most straightforward, truest way. So that is one characteristic of a true student, a true brahmacharin, one who wants to really walk the path of sadhana, inner self-development, must practice this value of staying equal, whether he or she gets praised or ridiculed. Man or apaman, higher accolades or no accolades. And the second characteristic is not to deviate from the truth. Hence the significance of the name Satyakam. So who does not deviate from the truth? Only that person is the true Brahmin or the true seeker or the true, the valid candidate for the highest knowledge. So if we were to walk the path of sadhana, these are two essential qualities that we must cultivate and develop within. And in fact, when Mother was asked what would be the one characteristic through which we could identify that someone is in contact with the highest consciousness, which is the supramental, she says, first thing is perfect equality. No sense of any disturbance. Anything happens, you're not disturbed by that. So, this gives us a little benchmark as to see where we are in our own journeys towards becoming a true seeker, a true brahmacharin, a true sadhak on the path of integral yoga or whichever spiritual path we are taking. So this is another story. The second part of the story is when Satyakama is enrolled, what's the first thing that his teacher tells him to go and, what kind of educational pedagogy he's exposed to. So if we have time, I'll come to that in a little bit, because that also takes us into the world of education itself, that education is not just given by books or sitting in classrooms, but in nature. That also Sri Aurobindo has given a beautiful explanation for, but we'll come to that in a little bit. Let me go to the third story, and then maybe we can see if there is interaction that we can do, or however we are doing with time. So this is from another Upanishad, Kane Upanishad, and the very word Kane is by whom. By whom is all possible. Who is behind the eye that sees? By whom is the ear that hears? Who is behind the ear that hears, and things like that. There is all kind of verses about that. But in part 3 and 4, we are told this beautiful story that Sri Aurobindo again has spent a lot of time going deeper into the explanation of, and that's a parable of the gods. Now, I'll just tell the story first, and then we'll unpack some of the terms that I have on the slide here. So the story goes, see, Vedanta or Upanishads are the culmination of Veda. So one of the key, one of the aspects of the core teaching of the Veda is the idea of perpetual battle that is going on between the Devas and Asuras. Devas as the children of light, or the powers that affirm light and good, the higher cosmic faculties, and the Asuras, the one which are the darkened children, or the children that are the children of the infinite, that they are the divisive forces. They are the children of divided consciousness. And the Devas are the children of united, infinite Aditi. The Aditi and Ditti are known in the Veda. They are the terms that are used. So divided consciousness and unitary, or the consciousness of oneness. So there is a constant battle that is going on between these forces. And of course, psychologically, we know from Sri Aurobindo's interpretation that these battles are also happening within us. That is the whole point of the Vedic teaching. So, but in this particular Upanishad, it's told in the form of a story that once, having won a specific battle, the Devas were having what today we will have a celebration, a victory party. We win, I don't know, India-Pakistan match or World Cup, there is a celebration. So there is a celebratory party going on. So the Devas are having this great celebration. And because they have won a battle against Asuras, so someone comes and tells them that there is some ruckus happening outside. So obviously the Devas in the party, the leader is the Indra. He is the, you can call it the Lord of the Devas. So somebody comes and says, okay, sir, I think there is some mischief happening outside. Would you come and just take a look what's going on? Okay, so Indra looks around and he says, well, let's go and see what's going on. Maybe it is some disgruntled Asura or some frustrated person. So let's not really spoil our party, but still take care of the problem. So Agni stands up and says, the god Agni, sir, I'll go. I'll take care of whatever the problem is, and I'll come back in a jiffy. because, they have won this great battle. What can really go wrong? So Agni goes and he doesn't see anybody out there, but there is some sort of a vague presence, some spirit, something that is not clearly visible or tangible, and there is a voice. So the voice says, who is this? Who has come to, stop me from what I'm trying to do? Agni says, I am Agni. So I said, what does that mean? What kind of power do you have? He says, I am Agni Jat Vedas. I know the birth of everything. I am the conscious power in the universe. I am one of the main gods of this earthly life. So I can devour anything. I have the power of, I can control time. I can kill people. I can kill everything that is there in existence. So this vague spirit that is there, it says, here, there's a blade of grass in front of you. Can you burn this? Can you devour this? Agni says, what is this? Are you really, are you kidding me? So Agni tries to burn this blade of grass, and it will not burn. It tries, Agni tries, and the grass will not burn. So poor Agni, he feels, okay, he's been chastised. And with a little shameful head, he goes back to his party and just sits quietly in one corner. Indra figures out something is the matter. So then he looks to the next god on his other side. Then comes Vayu, the god Vayu Matrishwan. Now, Vayu goes and same vague spirit is there. And he says, now who has come to defeat me? Sir, I am Vayu. I am bigger than any other god that you've seen. Okay, what can you do? What is the power that you have? Well, I can blow everything away. I am I'm so powerful in my, I'm the god of the life principle of the, and I'll come to the why this is considered as the life principle, but I can really um, grab anything, seize anything that is there in my purview. So this spirit says, this whatever this vague presence is, take take a hold of this, try to grab this, try to seize this blade of grass. Vayu is not able to do that. Vayu says, tries and tries, and then finally gets defeated and goes back again with his head hanging and sits in another corner of the, you know, great room where they were having the party. Indra says, okay, these little gods, they are not good for anything. Let me go and take care of this problem myself. So now is Indra. Now, Indra comes thinking that maybe there might be some vague presence that they are not able to understand, but I can figure it out what this presence is. Once I figure it out, I will be able to take care of the situation. And when Indra goes, that vague presence, that spirit, whatever the yaksha is the term that is used in the Upanishad, that just disappears. And in place of that is a woman. And that woman introduces herself to Indra that I am Uma Hemavati. Now, the term, the name is important. Hemavati is the daughter of the Himalayas. So we can think of it as Parvati, or we can think of it as the supreme goddess, the supreme energy, the supreme consciousness of the supreme being, the Para Prakriti. So she tells this Indra, what do you think was going on? Do you think it was you and your other gods, Vayu and Indra, who were really responsible for winning this battle against Asuras? No, you were mistaken there. There was some higher force, some supreme force on the basis of which you were able to win this battle. So before you go on self-congratulating, saying, oh, we have done all this, we have won this battle against the anti-divine forces, asuras, the hostile forces, whatever we want to call it, know that all your strength, all your power comes from some supreme being. And how the supreme being gives you that power? Through the supreme energy, through the mother, through the divine mother, through this supreme consciousness, the supreme energy, Shakti, the supreme Shakti, who is controlling and ruling and guiding everything that is going on in manifestation. So to bring home this message that even the devas, the cosmic divine powers, are nothing but children of that supreme consciousness. This whole parable is beautifully built up in Kena Upanishad. By whom is all possible? Only by the Supreme Shakti herself. The Supreme Shakti of the Supreme Being. So Sri Aurobindo takes this story and speaks about, in terms of self-development, he builds up a beautiful analysis. So, in the sense that these devas are aware of their own power. Indra is the lord of the mind. This is the Vedic symbology. He's the lord of the divine illumined mind. Vayu is the lord of the vital plane, where all our life energies, vital energies, our emotions, feelings, impulses, that's the plane of the being, the vital plane of the being. And Vayu is the god of that. Vayu is the cosmic power that rules over that plane of the being. And Agni, the psychic aspiration, the seer will, the divine will, is deep hidden in the earth consciousness, in the material consciousness, in the matter itself. So on our own physical plane of our being, that central aspiration that is there, that Agni, that mother keeps telling us in so many beautiful ways, keep the fire lit, keep lighting up that aspiration, that fire. So Agni is that. Agni is the lord of the earthly plane of existence, the material, the physical plane on which we exist. So, or we can also call it as the body. So when we are talking of self-development, usually we think of to develop these instruments of our being, develop the mind, develop the vital, or train the vital, or purify the vital, refine the vital, have a good sense of physical development. Mother has spoken of in terms of education, these physical education, vital education, mental education, for the development and training and refinement of these parts of our being. But that is not the end of the development. The true development is to know what is this development for? Why are we developing these outer instruments? For what is the purpose? The purpose comes in the fourth aspect of education that mother speaks of, which is the psychic development. To get closer, to get in contact with the truth of one's being. From there, the true development begins, which is for the purpose of seeking, uniting, coming in oneness with the truth of the being, which is a projection of, or a partial truth of the divine, Brahman, right? So this is, there can be many ways to understand this story, but Sri Aurobindo really looks at it and examines it from the perspective of self-development, of sadhana. What does this story really tell us about sadhana? And if it's all right, maybe I can just read one or two sentences from his explanation this is in volume 18 of his work. It's a pretty long explanation, but yeah, so this is, he says, the gods are conscious of a mighty development of themselves, a splendid efflorescence of their greatness in man, their joy, their light, their glory, their power and pleasure. So they know that by the victory of gods, Brahman or the Supreme has ensured that certain good things will happen, which is joy, light, glory, everything. But the vision of the gods, their vision is as yet sealed to their own deeper truth. They know of themselves. They know not the eternal. So self-development for the purpose of wanting to know, aspiring to know the truth, the deeper truth of ourselves. So vital discipline, mental discipline, physical discipline, all these education trainings, developments are important. But if we forget the deeper purpose for which we are developing these outer instruments, it's only half the story. It could even lead to what Sri Aurobindo says, some sort of a grand, because it can easily turn around and say it can become an asuric kind of thing, you know. So, or what we today know as, you know, the more ordinary ideal of development, that all, when we talk of all-rounded holistic education, the moment you take out psychic education from that, that is not true all-rounded education. It is just making us, you know, it's like building up the ego, the outer instruments. So that is one important story of parable of gods, because unless these gods will know the power of Supreme revealed to them by Uma Hemavati, they were living in this illusion that they themselves won the battle. So that illusion had to be broken. So how are we doing time-wise, Arunima?
I think, ma'am, we can take 5-10 minutes more. I think that
Okay,
would be fine.
okay, all right. Okay,
Even
then
more if you like.
okay. Then let me actually go to this story. This is a kind of another it's not a story that I was earlier familiar with. Just recently I came across, maybe a couple of years ago, in the Chandogya Upanishad. And this story is something that, how I came to know of this story is that some big time Western commentator on Chandogya Upanishad spoke about this. And in his book, I first came to know. And he said that there is a lot of weird stuff that we find in ancient Indian scriptures. And he gave the example of this story, which doesn't even make sense. But where I came across Nalinikant Gupta's interpretation of this, and he described this story beautifully. So the story goes that there is one aspirant, a sadhak, who is walking somewhere, and he seeks higher knowledge. Now, as he's walking on the street, a white dog appears in front of him. He just says, okay, I don't know what this dog is doing. And then immediately a whole bunch of dog comes. They stand around this white dog and they tell him, sing to us, O leader, sing to us of the food because we are hungry. And the white dog, who is now appointed as the leader of this band of dogs, he says, okay, meet me here at dawn tomorrow and I will sing. So this aspirant is very curious. He says, I don't know what is going on. Okay, first of all, we know the aspirant can understand the language of the dogs. So no wonder this Western commentator would say, what the heck is going on here? But so he's curious. He says, okay, I'll also come to this same spot next dawn. Dawn is important. And so he comes there, and there the assembly of dogs is there. And this leader, the white dog, begins to sing Om, let us have food. Om, let us have drink. Om, let the god Varuna give us rain. Om, let the god sun give us light. So, and all these dogs, they have gathered around him in some sort of a circle, and they are just walking around and singing this Om, Om, Om. That's where the story ends. Now, what is going on in this story? Who is this dog? Why is it white? Why do they meet at dawn? What are they singing? Now, Nalinikant Gupta describes that there is deep symbolism, deep meaning in this story. The aspirant himself, his name, he doesn't speak of the name. This is my understanding of it. His name is Glava, son of Mitra. That name is repeated twice in the story itself, in the verse itself. And now Mitra in the Vedic symbolism of God, Mitra is the god of harmony, the one who, the cosmic power that tries to bring harmony in existence, harmony within, harmony without. So the son of harmony, the son of God of harmony is seeking higher knowledge. A dog appears which is white in front of him. White because it's about light, it's about brightness. Dog because, again, bringing in the Vedic symbolism, there is a hound character in the Vedic stories which is named Sarama. And she is the goddess of intuition. She is the one who goes and finds, because it's a power of intuition, she sees, she perceives where light is hidden. That's how it's described in the Vedas. So in the Upanishadic, which is the culmination of the Veda, the same symbolism, the same imagery is taken. So when somebody is seeking higher knowledge for the purpose of harmony, the first thing that we would meet, the sadhak would meet or would need, is a clear intuitive perception of what is light, what is true, hence the dog. Now, in our other, in the Veda itself, there are other dogs, in the sense, dog characters, which are the guardians of truth, of the path of the truth. They are owned by this god named Yama. Yama is the god of dharma also in the Veda. He's not just the god of death, which is a later interpretation. He has two dogs who control, who guard the path to the truth. So again, the symbolism of dogs, the symbolism of a power that can bring us bright light intuition, light-filled intuition. But once the truth, intuition comes in flashes. But once you have a flash of a truth, other rays of the truth come. So that's what is symbolized by other dogs that come around. And they form a circle, they link together organically. So one intuitive thought leads to a deeper intuitive thought, another deeper thought, and they sing of Om, which is the highest truth. So the highest truth is revealed in beginning with a clear intuitive perception, which brings in other rays of light, other flashes of light. So when I came across that explanation, I said, really, our scriptures can reveal so much if we have the right key. So this particular story often gets overlooked because nobody could reveal what it meant. Leave it to Sri Aurobindo's interpretation of the Vedic symbolism that Nalinikant Gupta, one of his close associates, could give us a beautiful explanation of this story. So I just thought it would be interesting to bring this up because I personally was very intrigued by this story. And then just quickly, I'll maybe quickly talk about this. This, I think many people know, another very famous Upanishad, Kathopanishad, where we have the story of Yama and Nachiketa. Yama giving all kinds of teaching and instructions to Nachiketa about truths of existence, also truth of what happens when someone dies, and so many things. But at one point in the story, we get a very important key to self-development is how to make right choices in life. And when Nachiketa asks a very tough question, which Yama is reluctant to give an answer to, because Yama, as the god of dharma, not just the god of death, even though in the story he's spoken of because he's given to the god of death by his father. But Yama essentially is the one who actually rules over dharma. So he's reluctant to tell him the deepest secret, which he says even gods don't know. So you are just a little kid. How can I reveal that secret to you of what happens when someone dies? So then he allures him. Why don't you take, so much wealth? Why don't you take these beautiful houses, these beautiful, women, all kinds of luxuries in life? Go and live a beautiful life. Don't ask me this question. So he gives him a choice of between Shreyas and Preyas. Shreyas is that which is good for the progress of soul. Shreyas comes from the word Shri, which means what is good, what is auspicious, what will help one progress. Prayers is what is pleasing, what is pleasant, what will bring pleasure, momentary joy. So Nachiketa is a very smart kid. He says, no, I am not going to choose prayers because why would I choose prayers now that I have seen you, the god of death itself? What fear do I have? All these sensory pleasures, these fleeting joys that you are going to give me through prayers, they will go away like this anyway. So I stick to my original question. I want to know what happens when someone dies. So then Yama yields and says, yeah, you made the right choice because the wise one chooses Shreyas to get to the highest knowledge. So it can be again a very important tool for us in terms of how we look at our journey of self-development. Every moment there is a choice to be made. What are we choosing? What is good for the progress of my soul, or what is pleasurable to my senses? What is giving me momentary pleasure. So with that, I think I can stop. And if there are any reflections, sharings, questions, comments, we can take that.
Thank you so much, Beloo ma'am, for a lovely, enlightening session. You simplified such deep lessons for all of us, and there were so many learnings for everyone and anyone. Thank you so much for this session.
Thank you.
As ma'am said, participants, if anyone wants to share something or has a question, please go ahead. You can unmute yourself, speak up, or you can put your messages in the chat box. I can read it out to ma'am. Please go ahead.
Yes, Bijoy.
Yeah, see. So nice, so nice. See, the point is from the sea of stories, picking up the treasure for 1 hour, it is very, very difficult and all related to self-development. Beautifully you explained and nice. I have some thoughts on Satyakam and Javala story. See, what I felt, the happiness of the mother, Javala, with the conviction she explained to the child. Because all the odds she has faced, in spite of all difficulty, she told the truth to the child, which made, the conviction with which she explained, that enhanced the capabilities of the child. And the child approached and, told the truth. And you explained, how Sri Aurobindo explained the beautifully what made the guru to accept the child. So my point is, as a parent, it is a lesson for us also that we need to be truthful to our children, and if we are true, our child will follow the same, rule. So thank you very much. That is the thought I want to say. And thanks a lot for arranging this program to Delhi team. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I think, Vijay, you really picked out a very important point about this conscious parenting, very truthful parenting. That's so important. And mother emphasized so much, the role of a parent in the whole journey of life, and not just starting with when the child is small, but even before a child is born, the consciousness with which a child is conceived right from that moment onwards. So that's another important area that is, can be explored. So thank you for really bringing that up. Good to see you, Aditi, after a while. I was hoping to see you in Pondicherry also soon. So.
Yes, you will see me in Pondi soon. Just for your like it's always such a joy listening to you because the kind of structure you bring to the narrative. And it's like, even also when you were going through the slides, I saw some things which you might have skipped due to the time. And I was like, oh, I also want to know this. I also want to know this. So it's just that joy of learning that comes across when you speak. So that's really very alive in me at this point of time. And also there are certain key lessons which you touched upon. And like something that stayed with me was you said, no, truth doesn't belong to a clan, which is such a thing about divided and undivided like consciousness and children of the supreme consciousness. So these are those gems which stay with you and then you keep reflecting that how does it come true in your own life. So it was such a gentle, joyful reminder of the truths which express itself and like these supreme truth which we have to hold on through those little maneuvering through our lives. So yeah, thank you so much. It was a very joyful time spent the last hour. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aditi. Very sweet and kind of you. I think the one that I didn't touch upon, which probably you saw, was the self-love. See, I wanted to connect again to this term that is so popular in today's generation, self-love, self-love. And then we have this beautiful little anecdote in one of the Upanishads, a dialogue between a husband and wife, Rishi Yagyavalkya and Maitreyi, where he tells her, why does a husband love a wife? Not for the sake of the wife, but for the sake of the self. So when you look at this statement, it can be a very egoistic kind of love because I love myself, which is what the current lingo, the current slang of self-love is all about. I love my ego. But Sri Aurobindo, in a beautiful paragraph in Synthesis of Yoga, really breaks it down. He says, it really depends on what do we mean by self. So if it is the true self, the Atman that we are talking of, then yes, we love the wife or we love our children or we love another for the sake of that self because there is no separation between this self and that self. It is all one. So again, it goes back to the fundamental Upanishadic vision to be in the world based on the foundation of oneness with the divine and oneness with all, but through a simple anecdote that story is told. So, I mean, imagine if you can just forget the big self. It is such an egoistic statement. I love my child because I love me. So, so like that way. So it's very, yeah, really, we have a lot to be grateful for to our rishis.
Thank you, ma'am. We have some lovely messages too in the chat box for you. Some appreciation. Participants, anyone else wants to share something or has a question, please go ahead.
Thank you, everyone, for your kind words and for joining us.
I have one question now.
Yes,
you
Vijay.
told the Asura type has to develop compassion, it is towards themselves or others?
Hmm. What do you think?
Towards themselves.
Maybe that's to begin with. I think again, Aditi can address this much more effectively than me, but from a psychological point also, I think we tend to be more cruel or brutal when we are unfulfilled in our own selves. So we are also cruel to ourselves, right? Um, so it comes out, it gets projected to another. So for that part in us, we need to be first compassionate to ourselves. So from that point also, it is very true. Because ultimately there is no, in the deepest truth, there is no other. And yet for the sake of the manifestation, because we have to live in this relative existence, there is a separation between one and the other. So we need to be learned to be compassionate to ourselves so that that compassion can flow out to others as well. So in that sense, I think the younger generations are not right when they're talking about self-love. So behind each of these modern expressions, I think also there is some deeper truth. It just gets sometimes perverted or distorted. But the idea of even accepting one with all one's imperfections, with all one's what I could say flaws, is also a kind of self-love to practice. I don't know, Aditi, if you have any other thoughts to share at this point.
No, absolutely, yes, what you said. Essentially, it's like the Asura in us is like the divine in making. So it's like for a child in school or at home, you just hold the space for let them evolve. So when you hold the space for somebody, hold it with a lot of compassion that you will eventually come here. So it's just that creating that space that it's okay, you are also a part of me as other things, and we will together evolve. So that sense of togetherness only comes through compassion. And once you have compassion for yourself, the world is a mirror in that sense. So then you have compassion for the world. So of course, in those lines, you're right.
Good. Thank you. Very good question.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Aditi. I would like to inform everyone that the recording of today's session and all our Yes Talk sessions are published on our YouTube channel, Yes Spirituality. This is how it is spelled. You can visit the channel for content on yoga, education, and spirituality, and related subjects like self-help, psychology, and wellness. And we are also present on the social media platforms like Instagram and Facebook with the same name, Yes Spirituality. We would love to have you us there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Arunima, Aditi, and everyone who joined. So,
Thanks again, ma'am. And I thank the participants as well for being with us today. We'll close today's session now with a moment of peaceful silence. Namaste.